Nathan Carter never thought his life would change on an ordinary evening. He was just a college student, struggling with assignments, attending lectures, and wondering how he would pass his upcoming exams. But fate had other plans for him. It all started when he was walking home from the university library. The night was quiet, the streets empty. A cold breeze rustled the leaves, and the distant hum of cars filled the silence. As he took a shortcut through the woods near campus, something strange happened. A bright light flashed across the sky, followed by a loud boom. Nathan stopped in his tracks, his heart pounding. It looked like a shooting star, but it was much closer, too close. Smoke rose from behind the trees, and curiosity got the best of him. Carefully, he moved toward the source of the explosion. As he stepped deeper into the forest, his breath caught in his throat. In front of him, half buried in the ground, was a small, sleek spaceship. It was silver, smooth, and unlike anything he had ever seen before. Sparks flew from its damaged side, and the air smelled of burning metal. Nathan took a step closer, trying to understand what he was looking at. "No way. This can't be real," he muttered. Then he heard a sound, soft, weak, and struggling. His eyes widened as he noticed someone lying on the ground near the wreckage. It was a woman, or at least she looked mostly human. Her silver hair shimmered under the moonlight, and her skin had a faint blue glow. She wore a torn, dark suit that seemed both futuristic and royal. But what stood out the most were her eyes, violet and filled with pain. Nathan hesitated. She was clearly hurt, but what if she was dangerous? What if this was some kind of government experiment? Before he could decide, the woman lifted her head slightly and whispered, "Help me." Her voice was soft, almost pleading. That was enough for Nathan. Whatever she was, she needed help. Ignoring his fear, he rushed forward and knelt beside her. "Hey, stay with me," he said, his voice firm but gentle. "You're hurt. What happened?" The woman winced, gripping her side where a deep cut bled slowly. They're coming," she whispered before her body went limp. Nathan's pulse raced. Who's coming? Suddenly, a rustling sound came from the trees. Nathan turned sharply, his instincts screaming at him to run. Shadows moved in the darkness, and a strange clicking noise echoed through the air. He didn't know what was out there, but he knew one thing. This woman was in danger, and he couldn't just leave her. Taking a deep breath, he carefully lifted her into his arms. She was lighter than he expected, and he could feel her body trembling. "All right," he muttered to himself. "Let's get out of here." As he turned to leave, something shot past him, barely missing his head. A tree behind him exploded into splinters. Nathan didn't wait to see who or what was attacking. He ran. His legs burned as he sprinted through the forest, dodging branches and jumping over roots. The woman in his arms barely moved, her breathing shallow. Behind him, the clicking noises grew louder. He risked a glance back and saw figures moving through the trees, tall, armored beings with glowing red eyes. His mind screamed, aliens, real aliens. But there was no time to panic. He had to get away. Nathan pushed himself harder, finally breaking out of the forest and reaching the edge of town. The streetlights flickered, and everything seemed normal. No one else could see the nightmare chasing him. He quickly spotted his parked car and threw open the door. He placed the woman gently in the back seat before jumping into the driver's seat and slamming the door shut. The moment he turned the key, the engine roared to life, and he sped off, his heart hammering in his chest. He checked the rearview mirror. The strange figures had stopped at the edge of the forest, watching him leave. They didn't follow. Nathan exhaled, gripping the steering wheel. What the hell did I just get myself into? The woman in the back stirred slightly, whispering something in a language he didn't understand. Nathan glanced at her through the mirror. She was still unconscious, but he could tell she wasn't ordinary. And neither was this situation. He had only wanted to go home and rest after a long day. But now he had an alien princess in his car. And someone, or something, was after her. And somehow he knew this was just the beginning. Nathan's hands gripped the steering wheel tightly as he drove through the empty streets. His heart was still pounding. He kept glancing at the mysterious woman lying in the back seat. Who was she? And who were those creatures chasing her? The city lights flashed past as he tried to think. He couldn't take her to a hospital. What if the doctors called the government? The last thing he needed was the military getting involved. He also couldn't take her to his dorm. Too many people. Too many questions. That left only one option, his uncle's old cabin. It was a small place outside town, deep in the woods. No one would bother them there. Taking a deep breath, Nathan turned onto the highway and sped toward the cabin, hoping he was making the right choice. By the time he arrived, the woman was still unconscious. The cabin was dark and silent, just as he had left it the last time he visited. Nathan quickly carried her inside and laid her on the couch. He switched on a small lamp, casting a warm glow over the room. Now that he could see her up close, he realized just how strange she looked. Her silver hair shimmered as if it was made of light. Her blue skin had a soft glow, and her pointed ears twitched slightly. Even injured, she looked royal. Nathan shook his head. "Focus, man," he muttered. He hurried to grab a first aid kit. He had no idea how to treat an alien, but he could at least stop the bleeding. Carefully, he cleaned the wound on her side and wrapped a bandage around it. She didn't wake up, but she stirred slightly, her face twisting in pain. After finishing, he sat back and sighed. What now? As if answering him, the woman suddenly gasped and opened her eyes. Nathan jumped. Her violet eyes locked onto him, wide with confusion and fear. For a moment, they just stared at each other. Then she tried to sit up, wincing from the pain. "Whoa, take it easy," Nathan said, raising his hands to show he wasn't a threat. "You're hurt." She looked around the room, her eyes darting to the windows and door. Where am I?" she asked, her voice soft but filled with strength. Nathan hesitated. "You're safe. I brought you here after." Before he could finish, she suddenly grabbed his wrist with surprising strength. The Kralls are. Did they follow? Nathan's mind raced. The who? She frowned, struggling to stay awake. The ones who shot down my ship. They're hunting me. Nathan thought about the figures he had seen in the forest. Tall, armored, glowing red eyes. Yeah, I think I saw them. But they didn't follow me out of the woods. The woman sighed in relief and slowly let go of his wrist. She looked at him properly for the first time, studying his face. You saved me." Nathan scratched the back of his head. "Yeah, well, I couldn't just leave you there." A small smile appeared on her lips. "That was brave." He shrugged, more like crazy. She chuckled softly but winced in pain. Nathan quickly moved closer. "Hey, just rest, okay? You lost a lot of blood." She hesitated, then nodded. "I am Princess Alara of the Ardentia Empire." Nathan blinked. "Princess." Alara nodded again, her expression serious. "And you are?" "Nathan. Nathan Carter." She gave a small nod of gratitude. "Nathan Carter, you have saved an Ardentian royal. That is not a small thing." Nathan exhaled. "Well, I didn't do it for a reward or anything. I just..." A sudden noise outside made them both freeze. Nathan grabbed a flashlight and slowly moved toward the window. The forest was dark, but he could see something shifting between the trees. Alara's body tensed. "They found us." Nathan cursed under his breath. "How?" "I was careful." Alara looked at him, urgency in her voice. "Listen to me, Nathan Carter. The Kralls do not stop hunting once they have a target. They will not leave until I am dead or captured." Nathan clenched his jaw. "Not happening. I didn't save you just to let them take you." She looked surprised but nodded. Then we must prepare. Nathan swallowed hard. He was just a college student. What could he possibly do against alien hunters? But when he looked at Alara, weak but determined, he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't going to let her fight alone. Nathan's pulse pounded in his ears as he stared into the darkness outside the cabin. The shadows between the trees shifted unnaturally, and a deep, guttural, clicking sound echoed through the night. Alara's breath was unsteady as she pushed herself to sit up. "They're here." Nathan turned to her. "Are you sure?" Alara gave him a sharp look. "I've been running from them long enough to know." Nathan clenched his fists. This wasn't some horror movie where he could just turn off the lights and hope the monster disappeared. He had an injured alien princess in his cabin, and now her enemies had tracked them down. He took a deep breath and turned off the single lamp in the room. Darkness filled the cabin. Alara shifted slightly. "What are you doing?" "Making sure they can't see inside," Nathan whispered. "If they don't know where we are, we have a chance." Alara nodded in approval. "Smart." Nathan crept to the window, keeping his body low. He didn't know much about these Kralzar creatures, but if they had glowing red eyes, maybe they relied on night vision. If so, he needed to be careful. Alara pressed her hand against her wounded side and winced. "We can't stay here. They will surround us." Nathan swallowed. "Then what do we do?" Alara closed her eyes for a moment as if making a difficult decision. Then she looked at him. "There is something you must know." Nathan frowned. "Now?" "Yes." Her voice was urgent. "I am not just a princess. I am the heir to the Ardentia throne. And the Kralzar do not want to just kill me. They want to use me." Nathan felt a chill run down his spine. "Use you? For what?" "They want my blood." Alara's face darkened. Ardentian royal blood has unique properties. If they take it, they can enhance their own strength, making them unstoppable. Nathan ran a hand through his hair. "So, they're not just here to finish you off. They're here to capture you." Alara nodded grimly. "And if they succeed, countless worlds will fall." Nathan exhaled sharply. "No pressure, huh?" Suddenly, there was a loud thud against the cabin wall. The wooden structure trembled slightly. Nathan froze. A second thud followed, closer to the door. The Kralzar were testing the structure, searching for weak points. Alara looked at Nathan. "We must move now." Nathan gritted his teeth. "Where?" "The second we step outside. They'll see us." Alara took a shaky breath. "There is another way." She reached for the necklace around her neck and pressed a hidden button. A small holographic map projected into the air, showing the forest. Nathan's eyes widened. "You had this the whole time." Alara gave him a look. "I was unconscious, remember?" "Fair point," Nathan muttered. She pointed at a glowing mark on the map. "I crashed my escape pod nearby. If we can reach it, I can send a distress signal." Nathan's hope flickered. "And your people will come get you." "If the signal reaches them in time, yes." Alara hesitated. "But the Kralzar know this too. They will not let us reach it easily." Nathan sighed. "Figures." A loud crack came from the back of the cabin. The sound of wood splintering made them both tense. "They're breaking in," Nathan whispered. Alara's violet eyes locked onto his. "Then we run." Nathan didn't need to be told twice. He grabbed a flashlight and Alara's arm, helping her stand. She gritted her teeth against the pain but didn't complain. Together, they moved toward the back door. Nathan peeked outside. The forest was pitch black, but it was their only chance. "On 3, he whispered. 1, 2. Before he could say 3, the front door burst open. A towering Kralzar warrior stepped inside, its red eyes glowing like burning coals. 3, Nathan shouted. He yanked the door open, and they sprinted into the forest. Branches whipped against Nathan's face as he ran. Alara stumbled beside him, still weak from her wound, but she didn't stop. Behind them, An inhuman roar shattered the night. Nathan risked a glance over his shoulder. The Krelzar were following, their monstrous forms moving unnaturally fast through the trees. "We're not gonna make it," he gasped. Alara's face was set with determination. "We must." Nathan gritted his teeth and pushed forward. He wasn't a soldier or a hero, just a college student who had gotten caught in something far bigger than himself. But if he gave up now, Alara would be taken. And if what she said was true, the entire galaxy could suffer. That wasn't going to happen. "Almost there," Alara shouted. Ahead, Nathan saw it, a metallic object half buried in the dirt. The escape pod. But the Krelzar were closing in. Nathan's heart pounded. He had to buy them time. "Keep going," he yelled at Alara. Without thinking, he spun around and grabbed the nearest heavy branch. As the first Krelzar lunged, he swung with everything he had. The branch cracked against the creature's face. It barely flinched. Nathan's eyes widened. "Oh, come on." The Krelzar growled and swiped at him. Nathan ducked, barely avoiding the sharp claws. Alara, now at the escape pod, turned back. Her eyes blazed with anger. "Nathan." She raised her hand, and a pulse of blue energy shot from her palm. The blast struck the Krelzar, sending it stumbling backward. Nathan didn't wait to ask questions. He bolted toward her. Alara pressed a button on the pod's surface. The panel lit up. "I'm sending the distress signal." Nathan's chest heaved as he stood beside her. "And then what?" Alara's face was grim. "Then we hold out until help arrives." Nathan turned to see the Krelzar regrouping. More of them. His stomach tightened. This wasn't over yet. Nathan's breath was heavy as he stood beside Alara, watching the Krelzar regroup in the darkness. Their glowing red eyes burned like fire, and their muscular forms moved with unnatural speed. The escape pod's distress signal had been sent, but there was no guarantee help would arrive in time. "We have to hold them off," Nathan said, gripping a thick branch like a bat. It wasn't much, but it was all he had. Alara pressed her hand to her wounded side, trying to steady herself. "I can still fight," she said, though her voice was weak. Nathan shook his head. "You just focus on staying alive. I'll handle this." Alara gave him a look, but before she could argue, the Krelzar attacked. The first one lunged, claws flashing in the moonlight. Nathan ducked at the last second, feeling the wind from the strike rush past his face. He swung his branch with all his strength, smashing it against the alien's side. It let out a guttural growl, but barely stumbled. Nathan's stomach dropped. "They're stronger than I thought." Before he could react, another Krelzar swiped at him from the side. He barely managed to roll out of the way, but his shoulder scraped against the rough ground, sending a sharp pain through his arm. Alara, still leaning against the escape pod, raised her hand. A burst of blue energy shot from her palm, hitting one of the Krelzar in the chest. The creature screeched, its body crackling with energy, before it collapsed to the ground. Nathan's eyes widened. "You can do that." Alara smirked despite her pain. "Only when I have enough strength." Another Krelzar roared and charged at her. Nathan didn't think. He just reacted. He grabbed a handful of dirt and flung it into the alien's face. The creature recoiled, hissing as it wiped its eyes. "That won't stop them for long," Alara warned. Nathan's mind raced. They needed an advantage, something to turn the tide. Then he spotted it. A fallen tree, hanging over a sharp drop in the terrain. If he could lure the Krelzar onto it, he might be able to send them falling. "Alara, can you move?" he asked. She frowned. "Barely." "Why?" "Trust me," Nathan said. "Get to that tree." Alara hesitated but nodded. She pushed herself forward, wincing with every step. Nathan turned back to the Krelzar. They were advancing again, their claws glinting in the dim light. "Hey, ugly," he shouted, waving his arms. "Come and get me." The lead Kralzar snarled and lunged. Nathan sprinted toward the tree, leading them straight to the trap. Alara was already near the fallen trunk, holding onto it for support. Nathan reached her just as the first Kralzar closed in. "Now," Nathan shouted. Alara blasted the ground beneath the tree with another pulse of energy. The explosion shook the earth, making the log tremble. Nathan leaped onto the tree trunk and sprinted across, his heart pounding. The Kralzar, blinded by rage, followed without hesitation. As soon as Nathan reached the other side, he turned and kicked at the log with all his strength. The weakened wood cracked. The Kralzar leader let out a snarl of confusion as the tree suddenly gave way beneath them. With a deafening crash, the trunk collapsed, and the creatures tumbled into the ravine below, their howls fading into the darkness. Nathan gasped for breath, his entire body shaking. He turned to Alara. That was too close. Alara gave a small smile, but it worked. Nathan nodded, then froze. A new sound echoed through the forest, a deep rumbling hum. Alara's eyes widened in shock. "That's a ship." Nathan's heart leaped. "Your people?" Alara hesitated. "I hope so." The ship's lights cut through the darkness as it descended, dust kicking up around them. The sleek, silver vessel hovered just above the ground before a ramp extended. Nathan shielded his eyes as figures emerged, tall, armored warriors with glowing blue visors. They moved with precision, their weapons raised. One of them stepped forward, lowering his visor to reveal a face similar to Alara's. Sharp features, violet eyes, and an air of authority. "Alara," he called, rushing to her side. "You're alive." Alara exhaled in relief. "Commander Varian." Varian's gaze flicked to Nathan. "And who is this?" Nathan felt suddenly self-conscious, standing there in his torn hoodie and dirt-covered jeans. "Oh, Nathan, I kind of helped." Varian studied him, then turned back to Alara. "We need to leave. More Kralzar will come." Alara looked at Nathan. "He comes with us." Nathan blinked. "Wait, what?" Varian frowned. "Princess, he is. He saved my life," Alara said firmly. "I will not leave him behind." Varian's jaw tightened, but after a moment he nodded. "Fine. But if he is coming, he follows my orders." Nathan raised an eyebrow. "Oh, sure." Alara smiled faintly. "Then let's go." As Nathan stepped onto the ship, he glanced back at the forest one last time. His normal life was gone. Whatever came next, it would change everything. But somehow he wasn't afraid. He was ready. Nathan sat in silence as the alien ship soared through the sky, leaving Earth far behind. He still couldn't believe what was happening. Just a few hours ago, he had been an ordinary college student. Now, he was sitting in a spaceship with an alien princess and a crew of warriors, heading toward an unknown future. Across from him, Alara rested against the seat, her eyes half closed. She looked exhausted but relieved. The medical device wrapped around her wounded side emitted a soft hum as it worked to heal her injuries. Nathan glanced at Varian, the commander of the ship. The tall alien warrior was staring at him with cold, calculating eyes. "You are human," Varian finally said. "And yet, you risked your life for the princess." Nathan shrugged. "Wouldn't you have done the same?" Varian didn't answer immediately. Instead, he folded his arms. Humans are not known for their strength or their intelligence. Nathan smirked. "Yeah, and yet, I just outsmarted a group of Kralzar." Varian's expression didn't change, but there was a flicker of something in his eyes. Respect, maybe. Alara chuckled weakly. "Nathan is different. He thinks quickly. He adapts." Varian exhaled sharply. "We will see." The ship trembled slightly as it exited Earth's atmosphere. Nathan glanced out the window and felt his breath catch. Space. A vast ocean of stars stretched before him. He had seen pictures before, watched movies, read books, but nothing compared to the real thing. Alara followed his gaze and smiled. Beautiful, isn't it? Nathan nodded slowly. Yeah, but also kind of terrifying. Alara tilted her head. Why terrifying? Nathan hesitated. Because out there, I'm just a small speck. Anything could happen. Alara's smile softened. That is true, but it also means anything is possible. Before Nathan could respond, a voice crackled over the ship's speakers. Commander, we are approaching the capital. Varian nodded. Prepare for landing. Nathan tensed. Capital. Alara sat up. My homeworld. Velmara. Nathan barely had time to process that before the ship suddenly accelerated. His stomach flipped as they entered a wormhole, and everything outside the window blurred into streaks of blue and white. Then, just as quickly, the ship slowed, and the sight before them took his breath away. A massive planet filled the view. Unlike Earth, Velmara had glowing purple oceans, golden forests, and floating islands suspended in the sky. The cities were sleek and metallic, with enormous towers stretching toward the heavens. Dozens of ships zoomed through the air, following invisible flight paths. Nathan stared, completely awestruck. That is the most incredible thing I've ever seen. Alara smiled proudly. Welcome to my home. The ship descended smoothly toward the capital city. As they neared the ground, Nathan noticed crowds of people gathering. They all had the same tall, elegant features as Alara, with shimmering, iridescent skin and glowing eyes. Nathan gulped. Ah, are they happy to see you? Alara's expression grew serious. I don't know. The moment the ship landed, the doors hissed open, and Varian stepped out first. A wave of silence fell over the crowd. Then, a deep voice boomed across the spaceport. Alara. Nathan turned and saw a towering figure striding forward. His armor gleamed under the alien sun, and his long silver hair flowed behind him. His expression was stern, his violet eyes piercing. Alara stiffened. Father. Nathan's eyes widened. Her father. The king of Velmara stopped before his daughter, looking her over. His jaw tightened. You were supposed to be safe. Alara lowered her head. I was attacked. The Krulls are. I know, the king interrupted. We received the distress signal. His gaze shifted to Nathan. And who is this? Nathan suddenly felt very, very small. Alara took a deep breath. This is Nathan. He saved my life. The king's eyes narrowed. A human. Nathan swallowed hard. Yeah. Hi. The king stared at him for a long moment, then turned to Varian. Why is he here? Varian's expression was unreadable. The princess insisted. The king sighed and rubbed his temples. This is a matter for the council. Bring him. Nathan frowned. Wait, bring me where? Alara placed a reassuring hand on his arm. To the palace. Nathan wasn't sure if that was a good thing or a bad thing. As they walked through the city, Nathan felt hundreds of eyes on him. Whispers spread through the crowd, their strange alien language filling the air. He didn't need a translator to know what they were saying. A human. Here. Why did the princess bring him? He looked so weak. Nathan gritted his teeth. Great. I'm already the least popular guy on the planet. Finally, they arrived at the palace, a massive structure made of smooth, glowing stone. Inside, the halls were lined with banners, and golden light streamed through enormous windows. At the center of the chamber, a circular table was surrounded by figures in flowing robes. The High Council, Alara whispered. Nathan took a deep breath as the king stepped forward. Honored council, my daughter has returned safely, but she has brought with her a human. A murmur spread through the room. One of the council members, an older alien woman, studied Nathan carefully. A human. Why? Alara lifted her chin. Because without him, I would not be here. Another council member scoffed. So you reward him by bringing him to our sacred halls. Alara's eyes flashed with defiance. He is not some stray I picked up. He is the reason I survived, and he deserves respect. Nathan felt a warmth in his chest at her words. The king raised a hand, silencing the murmurs. Enough. We must decide what to do with him. Nathan frowned. But, do with me? I'm not a prisoner, you know. The old woman studied him again. You are an outsider. You do not belong here. Nathan clenched his fists. Maybe not, but I didn't ask to be here. I just did what any decent person would do. The council members exchanged glances. Alara spoke again, her voice firm. Nathan saved a royal. That is no small thing. The king exhaled. Very well. Until we decide your fate, human, you will stay in the palace. Nathan blinked. Wait, what? The king's eyes locked onto his. You are now under our watch. Nathan sighed. Well, this just keeps getting more complicated. Nathan stood in the grand halls of the Velmara palace, feeling completely out of place. The towering pillars, glowing walls, and strange floating lights made him feel like he had stepped into a fantasy novel. Alara stood beside him, her expression calm but her eyes filled with worry. The High Council had just declared that Nathan would remain in the palace until they decided his fate. That didn't sound very comforting. Nathan sighed. So, does this mean I'm a guest, or a prisoner? Alara gave him a small smile. That depends. On what? On how you prove yourself. Nathan crossed his arms. Great. No pressure. Before Alara could respond, Varian, the Velmara commander, stepped forward. The council has assigned me to watch over you. His sharp gaze met Nathan's. You will follow our rules. Nathan raised an eyebrow. And if I don't? Varian's expression didn't change. Then you will learn why defying us is unwise. Nathan sighed. Got it. Behave or get thrown into an alien dungeon. Alara frowned at Varian. He has done nothing wrong. He should not be treated like a criminal. Varian didn't argue. Instead, he turned and walked away, leaving Nathan with Alara. Nathan rubbed the back of his neck. Well, at least he didn't throw me out of an airlock. Alara smiled. Come, I will show you your quarters. A strange new life. Nathan followed Alara through the palace halls. Everywhere he looked, alien servants and guards watched him with cautious eyes. He could hear whispers as they passed. Why is a human here? He does not belong. The princess protects him. Strange. Nathan tried to ignore them, but it was hard. He was the first human to ever set foot in this palace, maybe even this planet. No wonder they didn't trust him. Finally, Alara led him to a large chamber. Inside, a soft-looking bed sat near a glowing window that showed a breathtaking view of Velmara's floating cities. This will be your room, Alara said. Nathan sat on the bed, testing its strange but comfortable texture. Okay, I'll admit, this is a lot better than a prison cell. Alara chuckled. I would not let them lock you away. Nathan gave her a grateful look. Thanks. But what now? Alara hesitated. Now you must prove to my people that you deserve to be here. Nathan frowned. How am I supposed to do that? Alara's expression turned serious. By showing them what you're capable of. A test of strength. The next morning, Nathan was awakened by a loud knock. He groggily sat up as the door opened and Varian stepped inside. Get up, human, Varian said. It is time to see what you are made of. Nathan blinked. What? Alara appeared behind Varian, looking slightly concerned. They want you to complete a series of trials. Nathan groaned. Trials? Like what? Varian smirked. Strength, skill, and intelligence. If you fail, you may not remain in the palace. Nathan sighed. Fantastic. The first trial. Strength. Nathan was taken to a massive training hall where several Velmara warriors were gathered. In the center of the room was a large circular platform. Varian stepped forward. Strength is valued in our culture. You must face one of our warriors in a combat test. Nathan's eyes widened. You want me to fight one of your giant super soldiers? Varian ignored his complaint and gestured toward a large alien warrior with deep blue skin and glowing eyes. This is Kor. He will be your opponent. Nathan gulped. I'm so dead. Kor stepped onto the platform and cracked his knuckles. Do not worry, human. I will not break you. Too much. Nathan sighed. Well, that's comforting. The moment the match began, Kor charged. Nathan barely dodged in time. The alien was fast, too fast. Nathan knew he couldn't match Kor's strength, so he had to think differently. When Kor swung at him again, Nathan ducked and rolled behind him. He remembered something his high school wrestling coach once told him. Use your opponent's strength against them. Nathan waited for Kor to attack again. When he did, Nathan sidestepped and stuck out his foot, causing Kor to stumble. As Kor turned in surprise, Nathan grabbed a small energy baton from the ground and tapped the warrior's leg. The shock made Kor freeze for just a second, but that was all Nathan needed. He lunged forward and pushed Kor off balance, sending the giant warrior tumbling out of the ring. Silence filled the training hall. Varian's eyes narrowed. Clever. Alara grinned. Told you he was different. Kor stood up, rubbing his leg. Instead of anger, he gave Nathan an approving nod. You fight with your mind, not just your body. I respect that. Nathan let out a deep breath. One trial down. But what's next? A growing bond. Later that night, Nathan sat on the balcony of his chamber, staring at the glowing city below. Alara joined him, sitting beside him. You did well today. Nathan chuckled. Barely. If Kor had been a little faster, I'd be a pancake right now. Alara smiled. Perhaps. But you won. Nathan sighed. I don't know if I can keep doing this. These trials, your people watching me like I don't belong. Alara placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. You are stronger than you think, Nathan. Nathan looked at her, surprised by the warmth in her voice. Alara hesitated. And, I am glad you are here. Nathan felt his heartbeat quicken. Yeah. Alara nodded. Yes, I would not have survived without you. And now, I do not want to face this without you. Nathan swallowed. Well, I guess that means I better pass the next trial. Alara smiled. Yes, because if you don't, I may have to break a few rules to keep you here. Nathan chuckled. I think I'd like to see that. As they sat under the alien stars, Nathan realized something. He wasn't just fighting to stay in the palace. He was fighting for something more, something he hadn't expected. And for the first time since arriving, he wasn't afraid of what was coming next. Nathan stood in the middle of the grand Velmara hall, his heart pounding. The final trial was about to begin. If he passed, he would earn his place among the Velmarans. If he failed, well, he didn't want to think about that. Alara stood beside him, her eyes filled with silent encouragement. You are ready for this, Nathan, she whispered. Nathan took a deep breath and nodded. Let's hope so. The High Council sat on their elevated seats, their glowing eyes watching him closely. Varian stepped forward, his expression unreadable. The final trial is not of strength or skill. It is a test of wisdom and leadership. Nathan blinked. Leadership. Varian gestured to a large holo display that lit up in the center of the hall. The image showed a detailed map of Velmara, highlighting different regions. You must solve a crisis. Imagine that you are responsible for making a decision that could affect the entire planet. What will you do? Nathan frowned. That depends on the problem. Varian pressed a button on his wrist device, and a scenario appeared on the screen. A powerful storm is approaching one of our largest cities. The energy shields protecting the city are failing. The people must evacuate, but time is running out. There are two options. Send emergency ships to evacuate as many as possible, or use all available power to strengthen the shields, risking a complete system failure. Nathan studied the map. His mind raced as he considered the choices. If they evacuated, many would be saved, but not all. If they reinforced the shields, they could protect the city, but if the system collapsed, the damage could be catastrophic. He took a deep breath. "There's a third option," he said. The council members exchanged glances. "Explain," Varian said. Nathan pointed at the map. "Instead of relying only on the main energy grid, you could redirect power from smaller shield generators in surrounding areas. That would buy enough time for a partial evacuation while strengthening the city's shields. You wouldn't have to choose between one or the other." Silence filled the hall. Then one of the council members spoke. "An unconventional solution." Varian nodded slowly. "But a wise one." Alara smiled. "He thinks like a leader." Nathan let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "So, did I pass?" The head of the council stood up. "Nathan Carter, you have proven yourself to be more than just a guest. You have demonstrated intelligence, courage, and the ability to think beyond simple choices." The council members murmured in agreement. "We recognize your place among us." An unexpected decision. Alara's face lit up with joy. Nathan felt relief wash over him, but before he could celebrate, Varian stepped forward. "There is one last matter to discuss," he said. "Your future." Nathan raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" The council leader spoke again. "You are free to stay here, but you are also free to leave. The choice is yours." Nathan froze. Leave? The idea hadn't even crossed his mind. He had spent so much time fighting to survive that he hadn't thought about what came next. Alara's smile faltered. "Nathan." He turned to her. "What do you think I should do?" Alara hesitated, then looked down. "That is not for me to decide." Nathan glanced around the hall. He had come so far, from an ordinary student on Earth to someone standing in an alien palace, facing choices he never imagined. Finally, he made his decision. "I'm staying." Alara's head shot up. "You are?" Nathan nodded. "Yeah, I don't know what my place is yet, but I want to figure it out. I want to help." The council leader gave a small nod. "Then we welcome you, Nathan Carter, as a citizen of Velmara. A new beginning." Later that night, Nathan stood on the balcony of his chambers, looking out over the glowing city. The stars above felt closer than ever. Alara joined him, standing quietly for a moment. "You really chose to stay." Nathan smiled. "Yeah, Earth was home, but so does this place now." Alara turned to him, her expression soft. "I am glad." Nathan chuckled. "You know, this all started because I tried to save you. And now, somehow, I ended up saving myself too." Alara laughed. "Perhaps we saved each other." Nathan looked at her, realizing something. He wasn't just here to prove himself anymore. He was here because he had found something. Someone worth staying for. As they stood together under the alien sky, Nathan knew this was just the beginning of a new chapter, and he was ready for whatever came next. The end.